No. Look, it's
All
the
right,
same problem.
welcome into Fans Interference and RYT the show. I'm Spencer Grossinger here with Dr. Grossinger, Dr. Bruce Grossinger, and what a Super Bowl it was yesterday.
It sure was. A lot of people are saying that 5 years, if somebody asks you to remember a play, nobody will remember a play. Why? It was a defensive battle, and there were certainly no exciting passing plays, and it was kind of a slugfest. And a true NFL diehard will appreciate a good defensive battle, but the casual fan might have found it a boring game.
You know, I looked at the game yesterday, and it was just shocking how Denver was able to play that football game, and defensively they played the game so well. Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, I didn't think that they could get in and get penetration on Cam Newton, and that first play in the first half with Von Miller stripping Cam Newton really set the tone the whole way. I didn't think they could get to Cam Newton at all and stop them the way that Denver's defense did. Even though they won against Brady and Roethlisberger, I thought that Cam Newton's elusiveness would come back to hurt the Broncos' defense.
I'm not so sure that Cam wasn't hurt in the first half. He was knocked down, one particular shot to the chest. In the second half, it was unclear whether he was physically hurt or just stunned. The one thing about being a team that wins in blowouts, as the Carolina Panthers did, it's much harder to play in a close game. And it looks like the Denver Broncos were just biding their time. It seems like they had a 6-point lead forever, and Cam just lost his confidence, had a lot of bad throws. But again, to his credit, he was on the run, and he just hadn't. You can't prepare for a Denver. You can't prepare by watching film. You just can't. You can watch a lot of movies of hurricanes or tornadoes, but when you're in the middle of a tornado, everybody acts differently. And you know what? There are a lot of good quarterbacks, including John Elway himself, who lost again and again in Super Bowls, and it took him time to learn how to deal with the big stage. So Cam Newton will be back, but this was one for Peyton Manning, riding off into the sunset in a sea of orange confetti.
Yeah, it was a storybook ending. I was just stunned that Cam Newton and Carolina's offense, they didn't do anything the whole game. Denver was pitching a perfect game, and then in the fourth quarter, down 6, you still have the rock. You're on your 15-yard line, and there just wasn't any belief. There wasn't any life in the Carolina offense. It just seemed kind of, Bruce, like Cam Newton was gassed. It seemed like they lost energy. It was reminiscent of McNabb trying to come back versus the Patriots. I think that the toll, the stress that the Super Bowl has, the amount of time of waiting, it just looked like Carolina might have just blown off all their steam in their pregame and just getting so hyped up for the moment that when it came down for the final drive at the end, they just didn't have the fortitude or the strength to put something together. But you just have to compliment Denver's defense. I think they're a top 5 unit of all time. And it's ironic because Peyton Manning, in his years where he was on top, I'd say from the years 2000 and 2012, when he was winning 5 MVP trophies, he only won 1 Super Bowl. And there were years when Joe Flacco would hook up with, I believe it was Jacoby Jones for an 80-yard touchdown where Claymar Aiken got burned. Or it was Ben Roethlisberger beating Peyton Manning in Indy. There's so many close calls. There's also the debacles in Foxborough, unable to win on the road versus the Jets. Every year he got to the second to last final level of the NFL season. And it's just fitting that a quarterback that's been that dominant over all his years, he should go out with more than 1 title.
Well, that's true. Many good quarterbacks, Dan Fouts, Dan Marino, never tasted victory, never got the ring. But for Peyton Manning, I thought he was very gracious in victory. He said that he was along for the ride, and sure enough, he was 1 for 14 on third-round opportunities. He basically, interestingly,
he didn't play very well yesterday. We can say that.
Well, it was the strategy. Obviously, it was not just him. In that last drive, they basically purposely ran the ball 3 times. They milked the clock, and they led it up to their defense to prevent a winning touchdown. And sure enough, there was a turnover, and, of course, the touchdown by C.J. Anderson showing second effort and a 14-point victory. But it sure didn't feel like a 14-point victory.
Yeah.
It seemed like a suspenseful slugfest the whole time.
It did. And that's because Denver's offense had the inability to really move the ball. On third down, they were, one of 14. I don't think they got a first down in the whole final quarter. I don't know, Bruce, if there's any team that's ever won a Super Bowl that has never gotten a first down in the final period of the final quarter of the game. That's unbelievable to me. It seemed Denver had opportunities, too, to put the game on ice, like when Peyton threw an interception or when he was fumbled, a sack strip fumble on third down when he could have gotten them in the field goal range. Other than one drive, Denver's defense, they just pitched an absolute shutout in the football game, and Peyton Manning, very fitting that he goes out on top. It's just the best defense won, and I just thought that Cam Newton would have more. I thought Carolina's offense, I thought they should have got Greg Olsen involved. Ted Ginn was effective a little bit. Philly Brown, they could not run the rock at all. Jonathan Stewart getting hurt definitely played a factor in the game. So Denver's defense stunned me in a way that I could never see. They played beyond wildest expectations.
Well, they stunned Cam Newton a lot more than they stunned you. I'd like to flip to today's highlights. There's certainly some newsworthy events. Starting right here at Philadelphia, Riley Cooper was released on the first day, and it was clear that they're still trying to rid themselves of the stench of the Chip Kelly era. Riley Cooper got a great contract 3 years ago. He made racial slurs. He was a poster child for Chip Kelly, showing bias towards white people. He underperformed the last 2 years, and they were quick to show him the door. And I don't hear any dissension here in Philly.
I think that the fan base is mostly glad about Cooper's departure. He had that one good season under Nick Foles, really a nice year that he had. But then when I believe the second year of Foles, when it was Foles and Sanchez intertwined, he really struggled, and he just doesn't have the ability to break away and get open.
Well, there's
that's a problem.
It's interesting you mentioned Foles. The last 3 days here in Philly, there's been some rumors that they are preparing to try to bring Nick Foles back. Certainly, Adam Schefter broke a story that the Eagles will not be offering the franchise tag to Sam Bradford to the tune of $22 million. That doesn't come as a surprise to me. And I believe the fan base here is split 50-50. And really, if you could articulate the position, we'll take different positions.
Sure.
Could you
Sure.
you be the architect or articulate? Try to say that when you're whistling eating crackers.
Articulate.
What is it? What is the?
It's not that
what's
hard.
the argument for Bradford?
It's not that hard. Well, the argument for Sam Bradford, it's interesting. You're asking me to give a spin zone for Sam Bradford, and I'm known on Fans Interference as not liking Sam Bradford, but let's do it. Okay. So Sam Bradford, if you have him, he's had experience. He's had expectations. He could play smart. He could be accurate with the football, and you know you're getting a steady and sure guy. You're not going to get a guy that's going to be a Pro Bowler. I don't think he can achieve that. The best thing you can get with Sam Bradford is a guy who doesn't turn it over, and with a strong defense, you can get to 9 or 10 wins. So with Sam Bradford, he's not going to hit you with big explosive plays, but he's going to control the clock, kind of be a game manager, an Alex Smith type. You already know Bradford from another year, and it won't be a complete and utter disaster. Like, his ceiling's at a 7, and his bad's at a 5. So you're not going to get, if you bring in a rookie, it could be a freaking disaster. And so for keeping Bradford, it's cautious if you don't pay him a ton of money, but.
Right, and the argument against Bradford is there's a certain amount of cap money. The cap's going to go up next year, but you still have to sign Fletcher Cox. You still have to sign Benny Logan. It's still unclear what you're doing with some other free agents. It's still up in the air what's going to go on with the running backs. DeMarco Murray, if you unload him, you certainly clear out some cap. The argument against Sam Bradford is very simple. He's going into year 7. He's had nothing more than a mediocre career. He's never had a big victory, and he's never going to take you to the Super Bowl. Sure, you could win next year, 8-8, 9-7. You could win in a bad NFC East, but what are you really doing? The cap, if you franchise him, $21, $22 million, you blow your thing. Tom Congdon is agent who is looking for some big money. I only see one other team. I see Houston competing against the Eagles. I don't really see Cleveland picking up Bradford. So I think they're being smart to wait. They might get him cheap for a fire sale. When I say cheap, if you could get him for, 14, 15 million and don't front load too much money, it's possible. But they're talking about Nick Foles. They're talking about Chase Daniel, who I believe played in Kansas City.
Yeah, he played at Mizzou in Kansas City.
So he knows
Peterson.
He knows Doug Peterson. And there's also the ghost of RG3 coming back and looking at drafting. It's clear the Eagles will be drafting an offensive lineman in the first round. Mm-hmm. They traded away their second pick. And some people believe that, some people are talking about tanking, but you won't be worse than the Titans or Browns. I don't think you could tank for Deshaun Watson. I don't think that's a smart play.
If you decide you could go into the top 4 in these next couple of drafts, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger's, the quarterbacks of that ilk are all sprinkled in the top 8. Even Flacco. Well, Romo's an exception, but you look at the top 10 quarterbacks, you can get one in the top 10. If you do your research right and you can hit on a guy, Chase Daniel will be a great option. He will be cheap. He's very cerebral, very comfortable to have in the locker room, and he's a guy that is going to be a coach someday. He's asked to speak at Missouri all the time. The only critique of Daniels is stuff that he really can't control. His height and his arm strength is limited. No matter how hard he's going to work out, he's never going to have an elite arm. So I know it sounds a lot like Bradford, but Chase Daniels is a lot cheaper than Bradford, and he's never really gotten an opportunity. And in mop-up duty with KC, he looks extremely impressive. Every preseason game, Week 17 games, Chase Daniel is impressive. So, that'll be a fun route. RG3, the problem with RG3 is in Washington, when he wasn't playing, he was still a distraction. And I think he wants to go somewhere where he can get playing time.
Just want to remind the listeners, you're listening to Fans Interference, Philly ESPN. You're listening to Rep Your Team. My name is Bruce the Sports Doc. I'm here with Spencer G, breaking down the Super Bowl. And the final topic I want to bring up in this segment deals with Johnny Manziel. And every day the soap opera continues. And Spencer, why don't you let us know about the news you heard today?
Well, it's disappointing. It's scary news. It's really a tough situation, and I feel for Colleen Crowley because reports are out that Johnny Manziel struck her in her left earlobe, and she is severely injured, and Johnny Manziel made threats against her to hurt her. And Johnny Manziel's gone from a guy that in College Station, he would drink too much alcohol, he would party like 21 and 22-year-olds do. He went to rehab, and me and yourself, Bruce, at least myself, I thought like you're going to rehab too soon. You're probably just out drinking a little too much. I think Cleveland's being too strict on you. But really, us in the media, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Our job is to project. We have to predict to the best of our ability. And I think we underestimated the situation of Johnny Manziel, and he has some serious problems that he has to take care of for himself and the safety around him. And it's impossible to defend Johnny Manziel if these accusations are true. It's impossible. And I was a fan of the guy. I love the way he plays at Texas A&M. I didn't mind the drinking because if you're 21, 22 years old and you can have the opportunity to be friends with Drake, Odell Beckham, Bieber, guys of that ilk, you would meet guys that are popular in pop culture. I think that if most people would decide to really go out and meet a lot of celebrities and have a great time. The problem is with Manziel is that the drink he carried over, and now he's inflicting harm on his girlfriend, and that is something that's just completely unacceptable.
Let me make a comment, please. We still live in America. You're innocent until proven guilty. The allegation is that he hit her, punched her, during some type of car ride, that she attacked him and he punched her in the head or the jaw, and that somehow she's lost hearing in one ear. Right now it's only a report, so I don't think it's fair to Johnny Manziel to say that this is true. We've seen so many times where allegations were made or whispered down the lane, So right now we don't know that it's true, but if it's true that he caused physical harm on his girlfriend and literally caused irreversible hearing loss, then that's felonious activity. That's punishable by going to jail, and that would obviously be something much more serious. Everything so far has been Johnny Manziel hurting himself, embarrassing himself, lying to his team. But this is something really. There was some whispering about some car assault to a much lesser degree, but if this is true that he literally caused permanent hearing loss, then this will be grounds for expulsion from the NFL, and the Johnny Manziel experiment not only will be over in Cleveland, but will be over throughout the league.
And I just wanted to say on this Johnny Manziel topic, and then we have one more surprise topic that I wanted to put in the show on a much, much lighter note. A lot of people are saying, for people that supported Johnny Manziel even a couple years ago or even, 6 months ago, people are saying, like, why did you support this kid? I told you he was trouble. I told you he was this level of a person. The people that didn't support Johnny are now coming out and saying, why would people support him in the first place? Why would people like Johnny Manziel? And I just think that no one could have predicted this, and that's just lazy, and that's just people are allowed to like a football player for the way he played the game. The way Johnny Football played the game was incredible. It was mind-boggling what he did at A&M. He went out and had a good time. In interviews, you could see the potential he had. He gave back to charity in Houston, and no one could have predicted this. And the people that supported Manziel, I'm sure that mostly all of them are now off Team Manziel, and we're just hoping that Colleen Crowley's okay. And again, it's innocent until proven guilty, like you mentioned. But even the Manziel supporters understand what's going on right now.
So let's go to the final topic. We're nearing the end of our segment, and people want to hear something light after that somber topic. So let's talk about it.
It's not the most light because it's a guy losing his job, but it's certainly more light than the Johnny Manziel topic.
So he's losing. So he's not going to prison, but he's losing his job. Tell us more about this one.
This is Derek Fisher of the New York Knicks. If you don't know, this is Derek.
I did
Fisher.
notice him.
And Phil Jackson today had to do something very awkward. He had to have probably the toughest conversation he's ever had with any player that he's ever coached.
Okay.
And he told Derek Fisher he relieved him of his coaching duties. And, following the Knicks a little bit this year, I saw them as a team of potential with Carmelo Anthony, but at the end of games they would really struggle, and a lot of Knicks fans are glad about Fisher's firings. But I wanted to give you 3 possible names that I think could come in and coach. I think David Blatt is an option from Cleveland, first in the East and went to a conference final. Luke Walton, who was on Phil Jackson's team, or Tom Thibodeau. Which of those names is most likely?
I think Luke Walton is really an intriguing name. He certainly, again, he's new, but so is Steve Kerr. He gained the respect of the players for the Warriors. He has good bloodlines, obviously, with Bill Walton. The thing about Blatt is I heard a lot of negative things that came out about Blatt, that he really hasn't jived with the team. He really is a very proud guy who's won a lot of games on the international level, didn't take well to being a rookie, and was really ostracized. It was Tyrone Lue's team, really. So nobody was surprised inside the Cleveland locker room that he was relieved. He might be a difficult person to deal with, a dogmatic guy, a little bit of Chip Kelly in him. As far as Tom Thibodeau, ironically, a good, certainly had a good record, was respected around the league, kind of a somber, dour guy, not exactly the most upbeat guy.
Right.
I'm not sure how he would take to joining a losing disaster.
Or having Phil Jackson, the Zen master, with Thibodeau.
Yeah.
The personalities seem to clash.
Yeah, I think Thibodeau is I just don't see him going. I think you picked 2 guys that are really somber, negative
But Luke
guys.
Walton would be a possibility.
I think would be a possibility. There's also
how about Phil?
Here's another thing. I think Sacramento is getting ready to release George Karl. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a good name. He's a positive, upbeat guy, kind of a fun guy. To see him slide from Sacramento to New York, one brush fire to another.
Kurt Rambis is filling in now.
Yeah, and everybody likes Rambis.
He's an upbeat guy, but
so maybe Rambis will ride him through to the end of the season.
But then Phil will come back.
What do you mean by that?
To be the head coach.
I don't think so. I think he's done.
The
He's
Zen
not traveling.
master.
Phil's got some orthopedic injuries. He's not going to be
Jackie
coaching.
Moon the team. You know, he
Yeah.
could be like Will Ferrell.
He's not.
And be the general manager, the owner, the coach, whatever. Anyway, guys, it's been a fun Super Bowl recap here on Fans Interference, and we appreciate you listening. We're gonna fire up another show coming either tomorrow or Wednesday. We're gonna discuss Blake Griffin. Could he be coming to Philadelphia? I want to thank Bruce Grossinger for joining me. It's been a good time, and take care, guys.